You're listening to a Meatsmith Harvest. This is the podcast that encourages and equips you to grow your home around the harvest. Hello, Meatsmiths.
Good morning.
Hello, Brandon.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. What have you been doing so far this morning?
Oh,
I haven't asked you that question in a long time.
No.
I used to start all the podcasts asking that, and I kind of went off. I stopped doing that, but I'm interested in what you did this morning.
I've started a new habit of allowing the ducks to graze every morning.
Okay.
Because I'm really stretching in my legs and feeling the benefit of benevolent confinement of farm animals. And of that horrible, suburban simulacrum of nature called a lawn that I have so derided. I actually realized that it's the key to grass-fed livestock. Even like mowing it and doing all of those things and fertilizing it that make it lush and thick like a mat. Gosh, there's a way to actually incorporate that into a grass-fed, small grazing duck flock.
Yeah.
That are way better than if I just left the ducks on the lawn, which I might be compelled to do if I were less discerning or more amateurish and younger, like last week. But, man, confining them in an area that will never have anything to forage and then letting them out strategically in the mornings and in the evenings because they are crepuscular, right? That's the word, isn't it?
That's right.
They're
crepuscular.
Crepuscular. I keep getting it wrong.
Crepuscular.
Yes, it's not crepuscular. I got to figure out what crepuscular means, if it even means a thing.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it does.
That comes from the Trumpet of the Swan.
Yeah.
We just finished it with our kids.
Okay, it's crepuscular.
Yeah.
So especially on these hot summer days, the ducks are just sitting in the shade.
Right.
And
there we go again. Sorry, guys.
goodbye, printer. They're just sitting in the shade, cooling off. They're not eating. And but in the mornings they are raring to go, and then in the evenings they're ready to eat. Mm-hmm. And those are the times when you let them on your lawn. And the moment they start they'll graze heavy, and then they'll sit down. And when they all sit down, then they just start to poop everywhere. And they're not really grazing anymore. They're matting the grass, and they are depositing nitrogen bombs on the grass, which is not ideal. You want that poultry poo to be composted before it goes on the grass. And so, and then when they sit down, that's when you put them back under their conditions of benevolent confinement, which is a moonscape, but it's where their food, their grit, and their water is, and their predatorially protected coop. So that's what I was doing. I like to let them graze every day, and you can train them. They get used to it. They get used to the pattern. They get used to the path to the lawn, especially herding ducks. Mm-hmm. So
it's really cute too. I love watching it.
Yeah.
It's a great little twilight ritual that we have now.
In the cool of the evening.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And I didn't really, it was epiphanous for me when I saw your dad mowing the lawn with a lawn mower that cuts every single blade and then captures the tops of each blade of grass, the tender tops, in a bag. And then you can dump that in the duck water, and they go bananas for it. For hours, they'll just be pulling grass clippings out of their water, and they love it. They eat every single one.
Yeah.
And that was like, that was an epiphany. I realized, oh my goodness, one does not have to graze in order to eat massive amounts of grass. We could actually let the lawnmower do this.
Right.
So it is a montage of suburban technique and holistic managed grazing that will result in lots of delicious eggs and duck meat. All on a small scale.
Yeah.
Backyard scale.
Yeah.
So don't deride your lawns or your lawn mowers. Man, there is no more efficient grazing machine than a lawnmower.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I are kind of on a journey right now, too. We're like rediscovering why Western civilization works in a lot of ways. Like, we used to poo-pah, like, oh, technology.
Everything.
Yeah. Fossil fuels. But like, they have their place in the universe, and we can combine them with our animals, and there's an efficiency that's reached, and we don't have to sacrifice that or the natural approach either.
Yeah, they can be incorporated into management. It's there is the tendency to kick against the goads, to go against the grain. Can be gluttonous. Like, you can go so far that it's just whatever benefit you might be striving for in the end, you're actually cannibalizing it in a pretty big way. And I only know that from experience.
Well, especially if you're trying to incorporate other natural goods like children,
right?
You have to pick your battles so well.
Yeah.
That you might have to let go some of your scruples that you previously had when you were, say, 20, because you didn't have children, and I don't know, you sort of arrive at the first things.
Well, you order them. Yeah. You rightly order them, because I still have all of those scruples.
Yeah.
It's more like I haven't gotten rid of any principles. It's that I have realized that they exist in a cosmos bounded by time and space.
Yes.
And time, so maybe
Exactly.
later on we work towards them.
Right.
A great example of this is how we've been clearing our land.
Yes, which is where the lawn came from to begin with.
Well, right, exactly.
Yeah. I was looking out,
Yeah.
looking at our brambles and our, we had sort of cleared a couple of trees, but their stumps were still just thrown around, and so there was nothingness. There was a no man's land. It was a moonscape, and I'm looking at my kids, and they're like sitting on dirt, like eating mud, and I'm like, okay, there's a answer to this problem.
Yeah, they play like tackle football on our gravel driveway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was remembering
5 baths a day. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and back in my childhood, we had this thing called a lawn, and it actually fixed a number of problems.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, I keep remembering the Echoing Green. I think it's William Blake. Oh man, it's been a while. But great poem about the older people sitting under a tree watching younger children. And the possibility for that kind of like, leisure in the best sense of the word, is that space, that flat space, that ordered garden, which is kind of what Eden is. It's like a sort of paradise, that lawn. Not to overstate the value of a lawn. But so in clearing our land, the clear choice, clearly, of course, the best way to do this is with goats, because we have this extra efficiency. It's like, not only will we remove understory, but we will turn it into goat meat,
Right.
and then eat it. And that worked. That was great. The problem is I had 15 other ideas exactly like that, and I was doing all of them simultaneously while we were having a baby. And it became one of the straws that broke the camel's back. And it was going to work. It is a great idea, and I would still like to do it. But even at its best and most efficient functionality, let's say we did get the goat thing down, which I guess we did. It was taking too much time. Full perimeter fencing, divided paddocks. And I kind of had this vision of a diversified pasture that had basically coppiced evergreen shrubs, because we have these 80-year-old evergreen huckleberries everywhere. And I can trim them down, and they will just do massive amounts of green shoots every spring, even in the winter, because they are pros at living in this region. Like, you get green from those things no matter when you cut them up here, which is pretty amazing. So I was going to treat them like grass, like forage, like this renewable pasture, silvopasture, for goats. And then taking out pretty much everything else so that it would be this grass punctuated by these tufts of huckleberry, evergreen huckleberry. So great idea. And, it would only take about
Excuse me.
25 years to lock in the whole property in that way.
Yeah.
and we'll do it. I think I still have that vision. I haven't given up on that.
Yeah. But in the meantime, our eldest is 9.
Yes.
Getting bigger.
Time is a passing.
Yeah.
And
he needs a rugby field.
yes. And we didn't need goat meat. That's the other thing. Like, that was a happy, serendipitous, ancillary benefit to the imperative of clearing the land. But we didn't need it. But suddenly I found ourselves working as if we needed it very much, and we didn't. And so it's easy for those little, well, this is a holistic, mutually beneficial arrangement, but do you actually need it? Like, is it? So there was some ordering there to go on. And then, so I ate all the goats. We ate all the goats. And because that was taking a little while, and for, the cacophony of life that crowds things out. And we got rid of them. And then just a couple weeks ago, we had a man with a machine come out. And he came with a large excavator, and he cleared 2 plots that are now just brimming with green grass, because we are also shamelessly irrigating. And
in the middle of July.
Yeah. And which is better than exposed soil rotting.
Exactly.
In the sun. It's really bad. So
Yeah.
we don't want to do that. We needed to get a flush of root and water holding capacity in the soil. And so he came out and he cleared everything so quickly. It was actually miraculous. It was actually so efficient, even though it's this big fossil fuel burning machine. I get it. But
turn the gain down on that one.
Hold on. It was so fast. It was so efficient. He did not waste one movement. He's an excellent operator, such that he at no point did he only do one thing. You know what I mean? You can tell a good excavator or any heavy equipment operator, especially if they're doing something like clearing, if there's no wasted movement. And not only that, like, he's doing 2 things at once at all times. So if he is moving a stump that he just lifted out of the ground to the pile, he is also leveling on the way there. Like, there are 2 things happening at all times. It was so cool to watch. He's a real pro. Phil. Great resource on Vashon. And he did this so quickly that not only was it efficient relative to the prolonged method that I was going to endeavor to undertake before, but relative to how long it would have taken me to do it and how many sacrifices I would have had to make in order to do my way, it might actually be like downright reprehensible. Just because it was so fast.
Yeah.
It was half a day.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Done. Shocking.
Yeah.
And it's just like equivalent to snapping your fingers.
Yeah.
So I think it was Chesterton or someone who definitely is in our ilk of people that are pining for simpler things and a closer connection to natural cycles and orders and the country. And he said that if the car gets you out there to see the horse-drawn plow in the country, then we don't need to regard it as an evil thing.
That's right.
The car served a good purpose.
Yes.
It got you out there, right? So it does actually have a place. And I feel that way about the excavator.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, I can artfully, and it's even like, it sounds pleasant. I can fell a tree with an axe and a saw, and it's so beautiful, the whir and the song of the saw in the tree for the back cut, and then the thud of an axe. It's just so beautiful on so many levels, and it's so demanding, and it really feels like a harvest. It's a solemn harvest. It's very like shooting a pig, because you have time to think, hey, this tree could have gone 1,000 years up here, because if it's a Douglas fir, and I dare to take it down now. And so it really makes you take account of your reasons, like, why am I doing this? Or the excavator comes and you're like, he gestures, that one over there, you can barely hear him, like, yeah, done.
Yeah.
So, wow. And the root came up too, like everything done. He just pushed it down.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, a dissonance there. And it's tricky because it is just the balancing of the demands of modern life and the means that we use to want to succeed in modern life.
Yeah. And, there's also this element I'm learning of, especially for open people like us who are constantly trying to like learn something new, learn a new skill, let's say, and then do it ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to be careful that we're not just like tickling our pride and going, well, I could do this, so I should, and I'm actually kind of good at it and I'm enjoying it, and that's okay. But like maybe there's room in there for, I could hire someone else to do this who can do it better, who's been doing it longer, who has acquired his own generational skill at it, right? Because Phil comes from a line of like 8 previous Vachon generations.
Yeah.
And his excavating company is
a huge family business.
He got from his grandfather, and
plus,
so
they could probably use the work.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where the economy kind of builds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's easy to turn all of life into a hobby, which is okay. And we kind of have the luxury to do it in modern society. Like things are so provided that I could fell every tree with an axe and hew every straight one with a broad axe and build a timber frame barn if I were willing to make other sacrifices. But I could do it. But ultimately, it's hard because you don't want that just to become a hobby, because I think the problem with a hobby is that it's cyclical. Like its end is me,
Right.
I enjoy this, therefore I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that there are other ends, and that's really when you're stretched. And you can know this in the temporality of pursuits sometimes. I get a mania, and it's usually to do something the hard way. Those are the manias that I'm possessed by.
Exactly.
So I'll start sharpening and restoring crosscut saws. Good grief. And and I'll be possessed by that, but it's ultimately temporal. It lasts for about 3 months. Solid, hard, and I get really competent at whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
But it seems it's so driven by conviction and by principle, at least for me at the outset. But then it's like the longer you do it, the ends aren't aligning with the real ends.
Sure.
And it's a juggling act. It's a discernment thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does have to be. And so I guess what I'm interested in now in the way we manage our property and our resources is to make things more than hobbies.
Sure. Yeah.
More than personal manias.
Mm-hmm. It's a good distinction.
And what that brings in is the element of sacrifice, is to do a thing when you don't like it and you don't like it anymore, like Johnny used to say.
Yeah.
You don't like it. And you do it anyway. Because the strange miracle in that is you find that, I'm doing this and I don't like it. That must mean I like it. I love it.
On the flip side, there's also, I like this thing, I could do it, and I might let someone else do it instead.
Yeah.
That's
right.
like the flip version of that sacrifice.
Because that's ultimately the goal of it all, I think, anyway, is to create an environment here where good work can be taken up, and mainly by our children if they want to.
Yeah. So
our role might be just creating the parameters for the milking cow someday. I'm actually really trying to stifle the milking cow mania right now. Or
the beef cow.
Yeah.
I'm looking at all this lawn going,
right.
But
yes,
no, it's for our kids.
Yeah, and it's not stifling. I mean, it's postponing.
Yeah.
And doing things in a more qualified manner. And I really think it takes self-discipline. Not that I've actually chosen to discipline myself, but because it has been foisted upon me. And it's weird when it takes an act of faith to do a thing that you don't like, for a good that you have conceptualized, but man, you don't feel it, but you know it, you know it nonetheless.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the excavator represented for me.
Yeah, right. So all that to say, you did forage your ducks on the little bit of lawn that we have now.
Right. Then that's the serendipitous irony. That's which is
right.
That was whatever. But that's the irony of it, is that in this sacrifice, like, this opportunity arises where I think, I've given up on my dreams of, slowly, holistically building up my land through the use of good managed livestock.
We brought an excavator on the property. We're failures.
We tainted it. We profaned the land with the tracks of this fossil fuel dragon.
Yeah.
And, but this amazing economy has unexpectedly risen from it. And I'm sure, my little lawnmower grazing technique is not news to anyone else. But to me, it really was. And it really is an amazing economy that I gained that actually serves my ends better and more immediately than had I indulged in my mania.
Because we wouldn't have ducks if we hadn't gone that route. We had kind of given up on the sacrifice area that previously was for the ducks. Yeah. And that now is the lawn.
Yes, right.
Right? But they were like, oh, it's too far gone. We just have to wait a decade before we get more animals.
Right.
But we cleared it.
Yeah.
And now there's new life there.
Yeah.
And so, anyway.
Grass. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's thank you for indulging us on that little philosophical morning. What did we do this morning? I also wanted to mention, before we talk about our content today, a couple of things. The first thing is this podcast is taking a new leap, as we've talked about before, and we actually have some professionals that are working on it now for us. And
speaking of delegation.
Exactly.
Because, dare I say, this podcast was your mania.
That's true.
To begin with.
Exactly. Yeah. I really wanted to learn how to do it. Yeah. And now...
And you had benefited from podcasts before, so you were inspired.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I'm ready to hand it off. And I found a great husband-wife couple. They're a team. And so they actually edited the last podcast, episode 14, and they're working on this one now. And right now, I'll just be fully transparent, we can afford to have them do 2 podcasts a month. We want to get to 4. So we really want your help to do that if you're up for it. So what I did is I went into the Patreon account that I have there, and I renewed it. I lowered the goal tremendously. I think it was way beyond. It was so far beyond. It was like unattainable, and probably dissuaded people from even... It was just too lofty of a goal for right now. And I lowered it
for right now.
For right now. Yeah, exactly. But I kind of made the goal more concrete is what I did, because now I know my costs. Mm-hmm. And so the goal now is $900 a month. $900 a month. If we can get $900 a month from you guys, then we can produce 4 podcasts a month, which is 1 a week, which is where I want to be.
Yeah, and I'd really love for them to become more interactive too. It would give us the opportunity through Patreon to craft whole podcasts around patron questions.
Right.
Which would be really cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm working on getting someone who can manage that page for us. Just hand it off entirely. So what I wanted to do is take these next 4 or 5 episodes and do like a drive. Kind of like you hear on the radio or something. And I wanted to ask 25 listeners if they could step up and go over to the Patreon page and sign up to give us, whatever is doable for you, whatever maybe this is worth, or maybe an investment on some of the education that you get in the future, whatever seems right at this time. But if we could get 25 people, I think we could, in maybe every episode, 25 people every episode, we would be at that goal.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, especially when I think, when I look at the number of people listening to these podcasts, we have a core group of about 500 listeners, I think. I mean, every week, every release, they listen. And then sometimes we get up to like 1,200, 1,500 listeners every episode. So, actually, that's the majority of the time. But I know there's a core of 500 of you out there, and I'd love it if you guys would want to step up after this episode, go over to Patreon and sign up. And I've got some little rewards there too. And we're getting ready to record on a film all the people that contribute and put that list at the credits of our films that we're going to be releasing on YouTube. So there's kind of a community that's being built right now. So please join in if you can. So there's that happening. I also wanted to mention the fall classes that we've got up on the calendar right now.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of room left. And there's one in November 15th through 17th. It's the week right before Thanksgiving. It's the Thursday through Saturday. They're always Thursday through Saturday. So fly in on Wednesday, stay, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and fly out on Sunday. And, one thing that's coming to me right now is the kinds of people that come. Sometimes people come with their husband or their wife for like an anniversary present to each other. It sounds kind of, they think it sounds kind of weird, but we're used to it now. And it's a great, great gift that you can do as a family, or for, as a
it's
partnering
such
couple.
a great date. I'm always slightly jealous of them. And I think you are so much more creative with your dates than we are. This was brilliant.
Yeah.
Because they have such a great time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like squirting each other with pig blood.
They're like giddy. Yeah.
Not really. It's a little weird, but not really doing that. Well, actually, here's one. But it's a great idea to do classes. I would love to do that with you. At some point.
We talk about
Maybe
that.
We could take a local cheese making class.
That's what. Yeah.
It'd be so fun.
Yeah. So that's a little idea there. You could also come as a father-son team. We've had some of those. Father-daughter teams, mother-son, mother-daughter. I mean, best friends. We've had, old college buddies, reunite here. It's a great way to just kind of partner up with someone, and the uptake is multiplies, I think, too, because then you have so much you can talk about afterward with someone. So consider that November 15th through 17th and December 13th through 15th. Sorry, 13th through 15th. So mid-November and mid-December, right before the holidays kick into full gear. So
great holiday gift.
They are.
They are really as far as education and harvesting, they are the most thorough and the most unabridged. We keep out nothing. There's no part of it that we don't let you do because, we just leave this to the professionals. This is too tricky or difficult for you newbies, except for the kill. I will kill the pig. But even then, I've had people, if it seems like they at least have some experience using a firearm and have the temperament to be able to pull the shot off, I've had them do it too, and they do excellently well. So there's nothing that is left out from the kill to the depilation or the deherring, which is what we're going to talk about today, to harvesting offal and splitting, cutting up all of the meat, traditional dry curing for preservation, which we'll be able to do, not just flavoring, which we'll be able to do this November and December on account of the fact that is pig harvest season. It's a refrigerator outside, so it's perfect timing for that. And then lots of cookery. You make pate and blood sausage and cook up offal, and we'll even have a lot more freedom with these pigs on account of the fact that they're our pigs. We're raising them right now on our property. They're out there, and our only limitation our only limitations are what our kitchen wants and can handle.
Right.
Which
is nothing.
It's not really a limitation. We can handle anything that comes from a pig.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of opportunity for us to pursue what otherwise might be considered rabbit trails, in a class.
Sure.
We can really go down and do whatever we need to cover.
Yeah. We always cap it at 8 people. So it's usually, usually ends up being 6 to 8 people that become a real posse at the end of the weekend. They're exchanging contact information and keeping up with each other, and they will too, because as part of the class you get to be part of our membership only Facebook group. So there's a friendship, a real friendship that happens, a brotherhood, a fraternity kind of
Yeah, and
feeling.
they'll even we've had students get together in other parts of the country because, maybe there's a couple from the Midwest, and they'll harvest pigs together.
Right. Yeah.
Using what they learned from the class. And that's the other thing. Like, I teach them with the earnest intent that you will go home and do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's really something that it is a human prowess.
Yeah.
It's not very complex. Especially when you see the whole thing from beginning to end, you realize that it can fit in your brain.
Yeah.
It's not too big. It's not this big gangly thing that's dangerous at so many points, and you have to have all of the possible disasters in your mind at every time in order to be able to acquit it properly. It's just not the case. It's a very human prowess, and it is, while it is work, it is very simple and gratifyingly so.
Yeah, I like to think that these classes are one and the same. They are both the introduction and the magnum opus to pork harvesting combined.
For us, yeah.
Yeah, it's really the introduction to our content and the creme de la creme. It's just, it's everything.
The ultimate.
And what was the quote that we came up with that a previous student had said?
Todd.
He
it
went
was
home.
Great.
Yes, and he went home and he made his own bacon using what he had learned in the class.
Mm-hmm. I can't get his words right. They were so good. But it was something like he shot us a quick one-line email, and he tried his bacon, and he said, "This is so good that I want to smack myself in the face." And I thought, he understands. Yeah. And he does. I remember. And he's an example of someone that in a class, he shot a pig.
Oh, he
perfectly.
Did? Oh, okay.
It was excellent. And now he can shoot pigs.
Yeah.
He can do the kill. And he has continued to do that on his own farm in around the Port Angeles area.
Yeah, and he's got his own clientele now. He's doing it.
Yeah.
So,
pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to mention that. Sign up if you can. They're going to go quickly, I think. The last little announcement, sorry, these are taking a while, is the documentary that came out. It is called Farmers for America. An Extraordinary Opportunity for Change. Narrated by Mike Rowe, who you might recognize in some other documentaries.
Dirty Jobs
was
his famous series.
And then directed by Graham Meriwether,
who also directed American Meat.
Right. Who has lots of American sort of big names in the industry. Joel Salatin is in there. He's in both of the documentaries, actually. And we had the honor of being part of this one. I think it was like a 5 or 10 minute little clip on our family and what we're doing. And the shop was nowhere near at this place. It was like bare bones.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
I mean, we were just building the shop at the time that they filmed. So
it's like 4 years ago?
3 or 4 years ago, yeah. But it just came out, and the filmmaker, we're actually pretty good friends with him now, Graham. He brought his son Abraham out and stayed the night at our property, and they did a screening here on Vashon, and it went pretty well. And and then after the screening, he and you sat down and did a little brief question and answer period. And mostly it was just you guys chatting, having a nice conversation, and we recorded it. So I wanted to share that with you. It's just kind of a fun little tidbit.
Yeah.
I'm going to have our editors tack that on the end of this podcast episode so you can listen to it. So at the end of the music, just keep listening, and at the very end, we'll tack on that conversation. It's like 15 or 20 minutes. So there might be something there for you to enjoy.
It was great. I remember, I don't think there's one thing that wasn't in the podcast or in the Q&A afterwards as it was recorded, because it was edited out because you couldn't hear it, which was Graham opened up the whole room for people to relay their most fond food memory, I think it was. And a couple people told some stories, but they were not mic'd, which is why you don't hear them. But one of them was a family friend that we have on Vashon, a great family that hunts deer and rides mountain bikes all over this island. And she told the story of her upbringing a little bit, but she grew up on a diversified small farm, the very kind that Farmers for America, this film, details the disappearance of, to end on a preposition. And she grew up on that antique, that thing that almost doesn't exist anymore. And when she was young, it was diversified, meaning it wasn't just 1,000 acres of corn and soy. It was beginning to be that, but it was also, there were backyard pigs and chickens for the family's consumption and a family garden. And she remembers slaughtering pigs as a child, and doing everything. Her mother or her grandmother, I can't remember who it was, but one of them was basically the master of ceremonies.
I think it was her mother.
Yeah, and not just removed. Incredibly, males here, incredibly capable woman. And she really guided everyone and gave everyone a job, and all the kids had to be part of it. They had to work on pig killing day. And they were serious about it. They harvested everything. They even, and to me, the mark, when they say we harvest everything, my mind immediately goes, yeah, well, you didn't get the intestines. You know what I mean? Like, it's so easy, especially for me, to be like, well, everything in quotes.
Yeah.
But no, they harvested the intestines.
Yeah.
And she explicitly remembers the way her mom would clean those and then inflate them. She'd blow them up and then hang them up.
Sure.
With everything else for their own sausage. And that was in I think it was in the
Yes.
Was it in the Midwest?
Yes, that's where she's from.
Yeah.
Minnesota, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And a real working farm where they were doing that to feed the family.
Yeah.
Not just for commodity, actually.
She almost can't talk about it without tearing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very special to her.
Right. Those memories are so valuable, that early family work. So essential, so efficient. It expresses a harmony, like the harmony of people working together. And I think that is very, even if you're not aware of it when you're in the midst of it, which is someone in the midst of 6 children, I can tell you the harmony is not always apparent. But in hindsight, sometimes I think of things and I go, that was amazing. Where was my head the whole time? Well, I don't want to say. But, it wasn't, I wasn't aware of the meaning that was going on.
Yeah.
That happens more. So I'm trying to be more aware of that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to keep pitching Farmers for America.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do too, because he's got more showings, more screenings coming.
Yes, all over the country. I think if you want to purchase a DVD, you would go to...
LeaveItBetter.com.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
LeaveItBetter.com. Because he is a filmmaker who makes a living making film. It's pretty cool. So you're never going to see this for free on Netflix, for example, because Graham needs to feed his family. And so he needs to sell DVDs. And it's a great way to support someone who is docile to his own subject matter. That's what's so cool about him, because Graham will start making a film, and it's sort of like a scientist accumulating evidence. He will go wherever the evidence leads him. He might even have an initial theory or like a conviction or a story that he wants to put out there, which could be as simple as, multinational conglomerates bad, small localized farming good. But he starts filming, and naturally, the closer you look at things, the more complexity arises from them. And the less appealing blanket oversimplifying answers become. And so that's what he does in American Meat and in this one. He looks really close, and he goes where the evidence leads, and he's honest. It's really great. And to think of, as a result, it actually comes out hopeful. That's the amazing thing, and that's why the subtitle is An Extraordinary Opportunity for Change, because kind of the basic stat in the whole film, that I guess if it's a narrative and there is a conflict, the conflict is all farmers are going to die in the next 15 years.
Right.
So they're all old, and they are all getting on in years, and they're going to retire, which means some crazy percentage, like over 80% of the farmland in America is going to change hands in the next decade. Which could be terrifying, or like all chaos, terrifying or wonderful, right? I mean, and he details struggles of that transition, young farmers seeking land and not being able to get it, which is a tale we hear all the time. And a few cases wherein the young farmers it is happening.
Or also the next generation of the bigger farms that we might otherwise demonize. Mm-hmm. Their children are growing up going, we're going to farm organic.
Which is amazing. Yeah, that was the most hopeful thing in there to me, because I get it. The problem is severe with, the degradation of the land and the multinational conglomerate farming model. It is so destructive in just countless ways. And in a very real way, it is a real and present disaster that needs to be remedied. But there's also this sense, that elicits like revolutionary blanket reform, because this is a disaster that is it's urgent. And so it's very easy to jump out with, well, here is the solution, and let's do it. By policy, by force, by whatever,
wiping certain companies off the map.
Yeah, right, because they don't deserve to exist, and probably true, but in this, there, of course, human life is so much more subtle than our outrage allows us to believe, because sometimes, and I experience this all the time, moral outrage is very flattering. And I feel that too. It serves two functions. It allows you to express your opinion, but it also allows you to feel real good about yourself and a lot better than others. And that is the two-edged sword of that. And I think that the complexity of this film draws out the fact that there are other ways to solve the problem that might, and he doesn't even suggest a way. This just arises from the narrative for me, because it's a good film, that are slower, that involve a little more patience and discipline. And because, like the story you mentioned, there's one farmer who has watched his town disappear. He stayed in the Midwest, purchasing all the surrounding properties as the small farms have vanished. And so now his farm is huge. And I don't know how many ties his particular farm has to multinational corporations. It may, but I don't know. And it looks like, a dire. He is, in one sense, he could be painted as the enemy. It's just square miles of soy destroying this gorgeous prairie topsoil, right? And it has been for a long time now, and it's expanding. And it's a monocrop and all these horrible things, utterly dependent upon global trade and fossil fuels. So in many ways, sort of the perfect thing to hate. But he has a son, okay? He also has a family. And his son actually wants to take over the farm when he is of age. And in this story, he's in high school. And as bad as the situation might appear from an outsider look, like, oh, this farmer is destroying the land. Well, maybe he's a good dad. Mm-hmm. It's a little more complex, and his son wants to take it on. And how do you think his son is going to want to farm it? And that's why this is hopeful. Mm-hmm. And he actually wants to turn it organic, which is a step in the right direction, even if it's a small one. And it's like, wow, we can't write off these big movements, because what they actually are, any generality is a conglomeration of particulars, and the closer you look at the particulars, you realize they're humans, and that they are therefore necessarily complex. Right. And I feel like that's why this one's really hopeful to me.
Yeah, and the more you think about any sort of innovation, whether it's from the ground up or taking over a problem child maybe, or something that's been put in your lap, it's easy to say, oh, it's screwed up. There's a problem here. It's messed up. We just got to wipe it out and start over. Mm-hmm. But if you look at like successful businessmen, for instance, or even successful educators, they have this mindset, the way that their brains go is when they see a problem, they automatically think opportunity instead. There's an opportunity here rather than throwing your hands up, wanting to wipe everything out and start over and maybe even play the victim card or like I can't do this. You can't expect me to do this. Like there's a mode that your brain can take, a shift, a habit really, that we can start going, no, there's something here. If we just enter a little bit into it, we can change this. We can almost make it better than if the problem hadn't even been presented to us. Yeah. And that's where the miracle happens. So
yeah, and that's why I think it's good to look at a problem, especially in agriculture. And this makes sense in the way you deal even with the land itself. A problem is not an excuse or a vindication of the failure of the whole system. It's actually feedback. You're getting feedback.
Yes.
And it's actually a very precise, if you're docile to receive it, indicator of what is not working.
Yeah. And maybe an occasion for self-examination too. Like whenever we see hard things that go wrong in the media, rather than point fingers, let's look at ourselves first and see how we can.
Well, and that's what I love about the family dynamic. Like we just can't underestimate that. And I keep going back to the story of this father and son because the son wants to farm organic. His dad hasn't. So maybe he doesn't want to. I don't know. Maybe the reasons are really complex. But his son wants to. And if you think about, how would we convince, the big, farmer that has hundreds of thousands of acres of GMO corn and soy to, decentralize or to change his practices? How would you, in a sense, proselytize him to a small local agricultural model that is better for the earth and better for people? How would you do that? Well, maybe you don't, but I don't know, maybe his son will. Like, honestly, what is the most effective tool in that regard? And I can't think of anything more effective than the family bond at getting to people's heart.
Yeah.
And to think that he's going to pass on all of his property to his son, who's already working it, in a very engaged way, full time. He's going to watch his son farm organic for the next several decades, and maybe change even more things that are going on, what the farm produces, how the land is cared for, and all of that. And at the end, he might come around. If the goal is to change minds, I think that might be how change happens. At least I'm hoping, because I have 6 children.
Yeah. Well, that's not nothing. Hope is a good thing. We have to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, we just shrivel away and die, and that's not an option. So.
No.
Forward thinking. So.
An extraordinary opportunity for change. Farmers for America.
Yeah, you can find their trailer on YouTube, and Farmers for America. Just look up the trailer, and it's a great one. So and there's a lot of documentaries out there that leave you going, oh my god.
Right. That's what I meant to say.
And this is not one of those. This is definitely like, oh, it's uplifting, and you don't.
But it certainly diagnoses the problem. It's not shying away from the issue.
It's not pie in the sky, but it is. It's just a very realistic look. Yeah. And you're right, Graham. He was very honest in his filmmaking. He had a hypothesis, but he wasn't like twisting the footage to get that answer. In fact, he's so honest that he goes to filmmaking groups, and he delivered a first cut to this group that he goes to, and it was more of those doom and gloom type cuts, because that's where you go sometimes. Yeah. And they said, no, this is crap.
Yeah. Well, because they know him,
Yes.
This isn't
you. Yeah. He kind of took the easy way out, maybe, or something. Yeah. And he was honest and hardworking enough to cut another.
Yeah. He went back to the drawing board. And created a really great film.
Yeah. let's get to
Our actual topic?
our topic, which is pig depilation.
Yeah.
Or pig dehairing.
Dehairing.
The hair of pigs.
Hair removal.
Yes. Why should we remove hair from pigs as opposed to its evil twin brother, which is skinning pigs?
Skinning pigs.
Yeah.
I guess for me, it's the same reason that guides almost every step in the harvesting of livestock, and it's to maximize the quality and the quantity of the harvest.
Yep, that's what I wrote in my notes. Quality and quantity.
Yeah.
So break that down. What do each of those mean for you?
So it is a fact that you will get more pig if you scald and scrape as opposed to skin. Because a pig has not a hide, it has skin. So unlike a rabbit is probably a good example, or a deer or a camel or a lamb or a goat or a cow, pigs don't have hides. There's no seam separating their epidermis from their subcutaneous fat. It's on there. Like, you're not going to wedge your hand in there and fist it off. It's not going to happen, because it's a different thing. They get freckles, they get melanomas, they get sunburns. It's skin, not hide. And so to remove the skin of a pig is to remove necessarily a degree of fat. And there's certainly varying degrees of skill in the skinning of pigs. Some guys are real good at it, and they'll hug the skin, and leave the maximum amount of fat on there. And that is easier to do if the pig is real fat. You have a little more forgiveness. You have 2 or 3 inches of back fat. But especially if you have a lean pig and you're working with like 3/4 of an inch, half an inch of back fat, it's really hard to not remove most of that fat in the skinning.
Right.
Very tricky, and it's dearly lost. I mean, it's because a lean pig is already so deprived of its wanted fat. So you just lose more, and it's not just fat that you lose. The nearest, it's a certain kind of fat. The nearest seam in beneath the skin of a pig that would readily release the hide of a pig is not in between skin and fat, but betwixt back fat and other fat. So you actually tend to, if you're not real good at it, you tend to remove almost all the back fat from a pig.
Oh, wow.
Because that is the nearest seam. And I've pointed that seam out before. I could point it out right now. Should we show people?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I happen to have it. Start working here. See? It's a pig. And I might be able to see it sort of. Let's see if I can get the
you can
light.
tell.
Oh yeah, see, it's a very faint line in that light.
That versus that.
Yeah, my finger's gesturing towards it. So that's back fat. That's not. If you're going to be technical about it. And the fat that is just under the skin, the subcutaneous fat, is much harder and denser. And so it chops better in a grinder, whereas it is less likely to smush and become pasty. And you want both kinds of sausage fat in a sausage, but you most definitely want the back
That
fat kind.
outer layer that would normally be taken off if you're knifing the skin off.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and what real quick, what breed is this?
This is a mix. This is a Craigslist breed.
Okay, so that's why we're getting about a half inch of back fat.
Back fat proper.
About maybe an inch at the most of,
Yeah.
what would you call this again?
I don't know. The fat that belongs on each chop. That's what I call it.
Right. Yeah, whereas on like a normal pig or
T, B, E, C.
Okay. And on like a Gloucester like we raised, you'd get
Tufabetch. What? Sorry. Yeah, on a Gloucester old spot, you could get a lot more, or any, like a lard
3.
pig, man, we're talking 4 inches.
Yeah.
Huge variation.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's more forgiveness if some of it gets lost.
There is, and that's assuming we're skinning. The other thing that you lose in skinning is, of course, this skin. But you can see the tail here, for those who are watching this on the YouTube. The tail is skin. Like, that's its food value. Mm-hmm. And the trotters also, which you can't quite see, it's skin. The head is it's skin with a little bit of fat and fascia underneath it, and then skull. So if you skin a pig, you lose a significant portion, if not all, of the food value of tail, trotters, and head.
All the extremities.
And that's really how I measure it anyway. That's a better metric, because we could definitely weigh the skin that you remove and then figure out what percentage of the hanging weight it would be and get a mere quantitative metric that way. But really the qualitative one is the rub. And if you like to cure things and eat fat and use fat culinarily, then you're losing like 70% of the food value of the pig.
Oh my gosh.
In our household.
Exactly.
Like no prosciuttos. You need skin for prosciuttos.
Okay.
You know, you can cure bacon without skin. Fine. You can make, boiling or simmering Easter type hams without it. But for us, so much of the value of the pig is in its massive amounts of cured fat stores that we use as the medium in which all the things are cooked. Plus there's crackling on the roasts.
Plus the skin itself. When you remove the skin,
right,
you remove the skin.
Yeah, right.
And you can't eat it on your roast.
No, because it's hairy and gross. But the skin is delicious, and it will crisp up for you on larger roasts that you cook for a longer period of time, like a shoulder roast or a Boston butt. I leave the skin on all of those, and they crisp up into chips. It's called pork rinds or cracklins or chicharrones, and it's magical and it's amazing. And
you can witness the magnanimity of this in our Anatomy of Thrift series, where in the side butchery episode, you guys filmed a shoulder roast, I believe.
Yeah, Boston butt.
And right as, I don't know if it was Beethoven playing in the background or something, but right like as the climactic moment of the symphony.
And it always is.
You crack, you just chip off a little corner of that roast. And it was perfectly timed on Andrew's part. Yeah.
Because the skin has become crisped.
Yeah.
It achieves maximum crisposity.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's incredibly good.
My head is swimming right now with like all these examples of why skin is so important.
Yeah, the bean pot.
Yes, the bean pot. So even after you've cured your bacon with the skin on, and you're slicing little bacon slices off of the skin, then keep that, and then that goes in your bean pot or your soup pot.
Yeah, because you'll have a big slab of skin left over and that skin has been salted and smoked, so it's never going to spoil, and it's very flavorful. And we put that in the bottom of a big heavy pan, and then put the beans and the pork hock in there, and then your stock and
the pork hock again.
Yeah, more skin.
More skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like pig skin to elevate, a pot of beans to cassoulet.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that's the thing that makes beans extravagant.
Yeah.
Like, they actually become something other. They become amazingly delicious.
I was also at, we were at one of the Latino celebrations at our church. It was like Saint... was it Las Posadas, maybe?
Yeah, it's probably Las Posadas.
Yeah, and it was in December.
Yeah.
So kind of a cold, dreary December in Vashon. And there was this big fiesta happening at the church. And they were serving this salsa type dish. And there was pig skin in it.
Yeah, raw pig skin.
Raw?
Yeah, I think...
I thought they cooked it.
Oh, you're right. She poached it a little bit.
She
it's
cooked...
highly acidified.
Well, it was cold is what you mean. It wasn't warm. It was
right.
a cold, very fresh, kind of fresca kind of dish. No, I'm pretty sure she cooked it.
She did. She
but it was
poached
cold, and then cubed, really, really tiny.
Little ribbons.
And infused into this salsa, very fresh salsa.
Yeah.
It was almost like a ceviche.
Yeah.
Is what it was going for.
Yeah, that's what I asked her. I was trying to figure out how she did it. It was like a ceviche? And she's like, no, it's not ceviche. I'm like, no, I didn't mean that.
Insulted or something.
I mean, like.
Yeah.
Simulacrum. But It was funny. But anyway,
Yeah.
it was acidified. And that's what made the skin delicious.
Oh my
There was
gosh.
like raw onions, vinegar,
It was so good.
parsley.
It was very easy to
and
eat,
little
too.
ribbons of skin.
It wasn't one of these maybe dishes that are more foreign to you and you kind of have to hold your nose and sort of acquire the taste for it. It was instant. Oh my gosh. And I
Which I
kept
thought
eating
it kind of, and lots of lime juice maybe.
Yeah.
It was super tangy, which is the only way that it would be edible beyond like 3 bites, because simply boiled skin is so rich. It's just, you can barely handle.
That's true.
Even that many pork rinds. But when it's acidified like that, I mean, I almost ate the whole bowl that she brought. It was so good. You can just keep going. It facilitates the eating of the rich pig skin. It was so cool.
Yes, it was a match made in heaven.
We should ask her for the recipe.
Well, I mean, we could almost do it because you have the pig skin. Yeah, you're right.
Maybe. I would like to get the real thing.
Yeah.
But that was really awesome.
Yeah.
Another thing that is essential, the pig skin around the belly area gets really thin because it's the part that's that's the nethers. It's not exposed to the sun and the rain, and so it's thinner down there around the belly, and the fat is really stretchy to accommodate the articulation of the back legs. And so when a pig is skinned, it's very easy to take away a lot of belly fat, which would otherwise be bacon. So that's real bad. Yeah. And again, there's guys that are real good at it. They can pretty much almost skin a whole pig by leaving the majority of the fat on the carcass. But another reason that I think is so cool is if you want to make natural salami, naturally, spontaneously. Oh, it's weird we say spontaneous. Spontaneously fermented salami. It's not really spontaneous. It's endemically fermented. It's like without using inoculants. So without buying cultures and without nitrate or nitrite, which are not cultures. Those are kind of ways that you control the acidity of the salami. And if you're going to do salami without those things, what you do need are domestic bacteria, on pig bacteria, to do your fermenting. You need them.
Okay.
You can use previously frozen meat, completely sterilized meat, if you're going to add starter cultures that you can buy online, Bactofirm powders and stuff. But if you're not, you must have little cavilling beasties on there, little microscopic organisms to create the acid that is necessary to make the salami delicious and non-deadly. And that's, where would that bacteria be? It's on the skin. That's where it is. Even in a scalding and scraping situation, which I'll tell people how we do that, but you're not sterilizing the skin. The water only gets up to about 150 at the most. And even then, I try not to let it get that high. And it's only in there for 90 seconds. So the pig is in no wise sterile. And it's a good thing, too, if you're going to make your traditional salami, because it's just like cheese. All of the bacteria that make salami taste good, all of the capacity, all of the diverse flavors that salami has and you might not have tasted this in salami, but this is what it can be: nutty, buttery, cheesy, sweet. Those are all things that salami can be without adding ingredients that taste that way, just as a result of fermentation. Those bacteria are all on the skin. Yeah. And just in handling the meat and cutting it on your wood surface, drawing a knife through the skin, through the meat, you're inoculating it. Because the meat, the muscle tissue itself, is basically sterile, unless the pig has an infection, which is when there's like bacteria residing in muscle tissue, which it isn't. It needs to be put there by the skin, by your handling, and then allowed to ferment in a salubrious direction. So all that to say, you need the skin. You need the skin for that. A good scalded and scraped pig, or torched for that reason.
Right.
Among others.
Well, let's talk about that then. So that's an apology for
keeping the skin.
For keeping the skin. There's 2 ways to keep the skin that we've discovered. There's scalding and scraping. So scalding with hot water first, and then there's also torching and then scraping.
Yeah.
So can you go over maybe, I guess, give us a rundown of what you do, and then maybe to achieve those ends, and then why you would choose one over the other.
Yeah. My preferred method is scald and scrape, which is like a chicken. If you've ever harvested chicken, you dip the pig in the warm water and it loosens the pores. And then with a scraping tool called a pig scraper, you scrape off the hair. And it's not just the hair, but actually the epidermis comes off also. So the final top layer of skin where the pigment is also comes off, which is really the thing you're trying to get off. Because it tastes not so good. And if you really nail the scald, then most of the hair will also come off too with that.
Yeah.
So I like to get the water to 147, 148 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I dip the pig in, because the thermal mass of the pig is going to displace that of the water and drop it a couple of degrees to the ideal scalding temperature, which is no more, no less
Dun, 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 dun.
than 145 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's it. That's, if you're going to watch any part of this podcast,
Yeah.
that is the magic number to get.
If you're going to endeavor to scald and scrape pigs, because good grief, you will not do it again if you don't get that temperature right. It is a horrific nightmare. It's really the key to the whole day. I say second only to the kill. If the shot doesn't go well, then that really doesn't feel good at all. So your psyche's messed up after that one. But if the scald and scrape doesn't go well, then your process is acutely screwed up. Big time.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that hotter and longer makes it come off easier. Oh no. That's actually worse than an underscald. So if you don't quite do it hot enough, long enough, you can remedy that by doing it a little hotter, a little longer. But you cannot remedy an overscald. It's just hard work at that point. And what an overscald does is it breaks down the skin of the pig too much to the point where it becomes sticky and tacky, and it yields too much under the force of your scraper. And it becomes gluey. Which skin does when you boil it too long. And it will actually adhere to the hair and the scurf, which is that epidermal pigmented layer that you're trying to remove. It will adhere to it. It's a Sisyphean nightmare. It's exactly the thing you're trying to avoid is exactly what you'll accomplish.
Yeah.
And I would say an overscald that's like the greatest nightmare. So here's how you avoid an overscald. And it's to check the hair, the ease with which it removes from the carcass of the pig every 90 seconds. So my apparatus is a 55-gallon drum, and I can dip half a pig in at a time because it's too short for a full-length pig. And I raise it out just a little bit, like 5 inches, at the 90-second mark, and I tug on the skin, on the hair. And I want the hair to just pluck off effortlessly. Not even a pluck. Pluck is too abrupt. There's no resistance. It just slips.
Peeling like a tissue paper layer off of something.
Yes, like a skin sloughs off of a boiled potato.
Or a gold leaf off the edge of a cake that you are decorating.
Exactly.
It's that
effortless.
Yes.
Okay. So when you've hit that point, hoist all the way out and scrape. And that could be 90 seconds. It could also be 3 minutes. It could be 4.5 minutes. But that is the key. And again, the point of that, it's not that it's a universal rule like 145 degrees for 90 seconds. No. It is the way to avoid the overscald. That's the point of checking every 90 seconds.
Okay.
That's how you avoid that. Okay. There are no additives in the water that can bandage
You've tried
inattentiveness to the temperature or to the timing. There's no secret pill here. There's no magic, at all.
Bullet. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do 147, which will bring it to 145. Check it every 90 seconds. You can use Old Baldy, which is a product that I think softens the water, and then it puts like even rosin, which is supposed to make the hair more grippy. Like it's, but it, no, you just
Just
need,
pay
it doesn't
attention
work.
to it.
You just need to pay attention. And which means your best investment in time before the slaughter is a calibrated thermomedopolis. So you
Right.
want your thermometer to be calibrated. And
Which, if you take it on an airplane to a slaughter somewhere else,
right.
it will mess up. So don't use that thermometer again.
Yeah, if it's analog, yeah. Maybe even digital. I don't know how that works. And I like to use beverage thermometers, and they are analog, not digital.
Okay, right.
Those are just the ones that I trust. They're cheap because I do destroy them, because scalding and scraping is it's a hairy, furious job. There is no, which reminds me to say that there's no impetus to get all the hair off right away. So when you nail the scald perfectly and you hoist the pig out and you scrape away, that scurf, or that pigmented layer of skin and hair, will not re-adhere. So you don't have to get it all off, being chased by the possibility that it will stick back on. It's not going to. It's forever loosened. But for efficiency's sake, you want to move along. So that's the scalding and scraping. And I use an electric winch with a remote that only works sometimes. And once I do the first half, I lay the pig down on a clean pallet, switch the hook to the opposite end, and dunk the haired end
And we use
in the bucket.
a 55-gallon drum. Obviously
Upright.
going upright. There are people that will use bathtubs.
Yeah.
Or something like you could lay it kind of vertically in a tub. We've never done that. But you can get kind of creative.
I think I like my setup because it's eminently mobile. It can go
Right.
anywhere. I can really set it up anywhere. 55-gallon drums are light and easy to move. And I put it on a burner, which is essential, which is the Bayou Classic jet burner. And it's got 4 legs. It's tube steel. It's really robust. And it heats the 55 gallons of water, which is not actually all 55 gallons. I fill the barrel 2/3.
Right.
And actually, most 55-gallon drums have ribbing on the barrel at 1/3 and 2/3.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you just fill it up to the second rib.
Okay.
And the Bayou Classic burner will heat that entire quantity in like 18 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Which is essential. Which means I start putting water in, and as soon as there's an inch of water at the bottom of the barrel, I blast the burner full blast. Because if you blast it when the barrel is dry, it will most definitely melt the bottom of the barrel. Even though it's steel, it will turn it red and it will become pliable and you'll destroy it. So you have to put that water in there to keep the temperature low.
Okay, yeah.
And so put the hose in, turn it on, 1 inch of water or so, blast the heat. And then by the time it fills up, it's already pretty close. But that's when I walk away and I line up for the shot. I make the kills. And by the time I drag the pig to the barrel, it's at temp.
Yeah. You've got it down to an art now. And tell us a little bit about when you're actually scraping.
Yeah.
Any words of wisdom, or I can think of one, but I just know you're real stubborn. You will get every single little hair off, and it rewards you later when you're in the butcher shop because now you've got this culinarily pristine and ready thing to work with.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe when we first started, well, even then you were pretty good, but I have seen other farmers like, well, we got 90% of it. We're good.
Yeah.
And then they actually end up not getting the trotter or the head all the way. Some of these corners, these little niggling crevices.
The hard parts.
Yeah. They're
jiggly. They have no resistance. So like the back is really easy because it's straight and tough and strong. So you can apply lots of pressure with the scraper and the scurf just peels off. Whereas the jiggly bit under the neck is, there's no backing there. And so it's harder. And so sometimes in those places or in, fat folds, I'll use my fingers. Just pull off hair and scurf. But that really is the key. Like, even if I have completely, for whatever reason, God forbid, messed up, botched the scald, I still don't stop until it's hairless.
I know.
And that's really the difference is there's actually no excuse. This sounds so mean. There's actually no excuse in my perspective as a processor for any hair on the pig.
Okay.
If there is, I've failed. And maybe I've done that, once or twice where it's like the end of the day and it's usually in a torching situation.
No.
Where I physically can't do it. And usually I don't notice it until the skin has dried and the roots and receded and the little 5 o'clock shadow of hairs have re-emerged. Oh gosh. Which happens. Oh. And it breaks my brain.
That would be deflating.
It's really deflating. But so all that to say is you can get it all off. You can. The only reason you wouldn't is because you chose to stop before it was off.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so I have made every mistake in the book, but you keep going until it's denuded. Which is why I feel like I get, carpal tunnel or tennis elbow or whatever it is. Yeah, tennis elbow when I scrape. But
so that can be an advantage. I mean, you work alone because you're a processor by trade, but that can be an advantage to having 2 or 3 or 4 guys out there with you because then you're all enthused,
fresh,
and you're egging each other on, like, no, let's keep going, because it can be kind of one of those CrossFit experiences.
Definitely, and it's how was I going to say about that? It really is not. This is me like way too impressed with my own trade, but it's not just a physical demand. It actually is more mentally exhausting to get every hair off. Yeah. And I find that's the thing that really tires me out. Yeah. To actually look for every hair and then to attack it to get it off. That is as mentally, if not more mentally exhausting than physical demand.
And that's why you strategically prioritize the scurf first.
Right, yeah.
Right? Because, you'll leave some hairs on. Right. I'll get to that later with a knife. Yeah. But I'll get the scurf off every little bit. And then I can go back and sharpen my knife, and you'll shave where just the hairs are kind of prickling through. But the scurf is really that tough piece. Yeah, that is in the earlobes.
Which is effortless if you get the scald right. Sure. And there are a few exceptions to that where, young pigs are really easy, usually, particularly in the summer when their coats are the lightest, which that is when most pigs are young, is right in the summer. So that is a very easy scald and scrape. It's flattering. You're just like, oh, this is so easy. Everything just flips right off effortlessly, and your scraper's getting all the hair and the scurf with one go. Yes. And you might find it discouraging when you get to fall and the pig is bigger and he or she is not only shedding, but growing new hairs. Yeah. So this little window where even perfect scalding technique still results in a difficult job. And that is when they are growing new hairs. And for some reason, their scurf is more stubborn at that point. And you'll notice, you'll scrape and you'll see mature, big bristles, and they could be 3 or 4 inches long. And then little tiny new growth hair. Oh. And that is this little pocket in the fall, which happens to be when we harvest them all. That scalding and scraping is, no matter what you do, it's more elbow grease. It's more difficult. You have to embrace your inner stubbornness and just indulge it to a limitless degree. And that's
delaying gratification. Yeah. Because later in the kitchen, you're going to be really thankful you did.
Because the thing that makes, there's a very, in a farm-based kitchen like ours, the line between the field and the food prep area is very thin. So lots of things get over it, like blood and mud and stuff. But I would say that line is a pig hair. That is really, truly discouraging. Okay. Hair in the kitchen is not...
It's not appetizing.
Not even cute. It's not rustic.
I like it when maybe attractive. A blade of grass gets brought in. Oh, that's cute. Yeah. It kind of reminds me, we're grass feeding our animals. So I can put up with the little field grass blade. But hair is not.
Hair is not cool.
Yeah.
It's gross in every single way.
I
So
think Seinfeld has a great bit on that, right?
probably.
We love hair when it's on people.
Yeah,
But then
right.
as soon as it comes off and it's like in your plate or
Yeah.
something, it's just,
We're
ah!
horrified. Yeah. As if
should
it's some
find that.
foreign object.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that to say, what that translates to on slaughter day is get all the hair off and don't put it off. So my general rule is, barring some really horrible disaster, which they happen, the rule is get every hair off on kill day.
Okay.
Everything. Don't leave yourself hair removal chores later on. You are never going to get a hairy pig head out of your fridge and make head cheese.
Yes, true.
Unless you are more... If you're stubborn enough to do that, you're stubborn enough to clean it the day of the kill.
Yeah.
So just do it the day of the kill.
Yeah.
Putting hairy trotters in your fridge like you're gonna... Oh,
Yes.
no, it discourages so much because it's hard enough to get the hair off of a whole pig. It's much more difficult to get it off parts because they have no backing. You can't scrape something that's just slightly bigger than your hand,
Yes.
or that's jiggling all over your counter and smearing fat and blood everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
just don't
Well, and that's
do
why,
it all the day of the kill.
again, if you're doing this as a team, which most of you are, because 99% of you are not by trade processors, you should be doing this as a family or as a team. And so that's where delegating can help in.
That's what I was gonna say meant by the mental exhaustion thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're just gonna be brain tired from trying to hunt down every hair. Get someone else who's not.
Yeah.
And
you work on this ear.
they'll get those
I'll work
ones.
on this ear. You work on that foot. And then also, like, I'm tired of this foot. You want to trade feet?
Yeah.
Just like look at something new.
It does help. It does help.
Yeah.
Because that brain tired thing is real.
Yeah. And then torching. So how do you torch?
Torching is that's my plan B. If
Okay.
like recently my winch has not been working, so it only goes up, but I just fixed it. So fortunately, and it's easier for me to torch a pig if my winch only goes up, if you know what I mean.
Uh-huh.
I can't, because scalding and scraping requires lots of winch movement, lots of up and down.
Yes.
And if one of those is slow or not working, then suddenly it becomes very inefficient. So I've been torching, and torching is, it works. It is definitely an option that you would choose for culinary purposes. And I know we just said that hair is a thing that does not belong in the kitchen, but there's exceptions to everything.
Uh-huh.
You would torch a pig because you want a little more skunk on there.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I still get it crazy clean. And
Right.
if a pig's young enough and it's the summer, I will get it as clean as a scalded and scraped pig. I will be more tired. So I feel like the biggest difference is torching is more demanding because for whatever reason, you require more force with each scrape of the hog scraper, the bell scraper, than you do with a proper scald. And I guess I do know that way. It's because all the hairs are still intact. So what that means is, to get down to the exacerbating details, is you torch the pig once. You do a once over. And I do this segmented, like I'll do it the back legs first before I put the gambrel in. And then the whole back segment, the hams. But you do one pass with the torch just so that the scurf, the pigmented layer of skin, bubbles like large goosebumps. You don't want to get huge bubbles because that's a little too much. You just little bubbles. And you're actually seeing the scurf rise like it's trying to jump off of the dermis.
Okay.
The epidermis is trying to jump off of it. And move the torch on. Like, don't heat that part anymore.
Yes.
And as you move on, you'll notice you're leaving all the hairs. Like, you've just singed the tops of them.
Okay.
But the scurf is lifted off before the hairs are burnt, particularly if
Okay.
the pig is wet, which in this region it inevitably will be. And then you scrape off the scurf.
Right.
And the hairs are still on there, like all of them. Way more than
Really?
you could shave. Yes. They're
So
just
more
all
than-
shortened. They're just all charred a little bit. And then,
so then you have to scrape or
no, there's too many hairs to shave.
okay.
There's too many. because in a scald you do remove most of the hairs with the scraper. Even if there's a lot left, you've removed 90%. But with a torch, they are all still there. They're just all shorter. And if you try to shave that, you would be quickly discouraged. It's way too much, even for a very sharp knife. Not that it gets dull, it's just it would take hours. And so you hit it with the torch again, and you char the hairs right down to the follicle. And it's a heavy blast, and you are even browning the skin a little bit. The skin will darken on you because you're charring it.
Yeah, it looks when you bring them in at the end of a day, it smells different, it looks different.
Yeah, it's slightly tenderized, and it's already kind of on its way to being edible a little more. It's more chewable.
That makes
And because it's a lot of more of the collagen has converted to gelatin, so it's a little sweeter, which is that's the word on the street. Like historically, people prefer torching because of the sweetness. Back again before highly refined sugar defined sweetness for our palates.
Right.
Sweetness was gelatin instead of collagen. You know, you can actually taste that little sweetness.
Yeah.
So
like when you char an onion or something. It's slightly sweet.
Yeah. I think gelatin has a sweetness about it that's really nice, a sweet richness. And so you torch it hard all the way down to the follicles, and then you need to scrape that.
Yes.
And so, because now you have a bunch of charred hair on there.
So you're scraping it twice.
You scrape it again.
Wow, that's why you're tired at the end of the day.
And I go off, and then if you're going to be obsessively stubborn like I am, I hit it with a Scotch-Brite sponge.
Oh, wow.
Because the scraper, it does remove a lot of the charred hairs and some of the follicles if you hold it there long enough, but it leaves ash behind, and you can scrub almost all of it off if you're stubborn enough with the coarse side of a Scotch-Brite sponge. And Scotch-Brite even makes, this is like an ad, they make a coarse sponge with a handle on it. And you scrub it hard, and you have to have the hose right next to you because you have to get it wet first and then scrub it, and then you rinse it. But you got to rinse it immediately, or the ash will dry and kind of re-adhere, and you have to scrub it again. So you rinse it, and you'll see it peel down, and you will be amazed at how clean it is. You'll be like, wow, that was... Because to be honest, torching, it looks pretty nasty until after the Scotch-Brite. It does not look good. And then you scrub it, and it's shocking. It's like, wow, that's actually white. I got it. So it's much more arduous. In my experience. And I think that's because I am trying to get all the way to the same result that I would get from a scald and scrape, which doesn't necessarily have to be the case because, like I say, we had someone contact us to torch pigs, and we didn't know that until the day of slaughter, and he showed up. He was a Russian guy, and we've told this story before. With him. Russian as in did not speak English, and he was going to make salo, which is his heritage. It is, the northeastern cured pork fat that is common to all peoples in the northern hemisphere, in Europe, and they all have their version of it in Western, Central, Eastern Europe, and everywhere. But his is salo, and Słonina is Polish, and Salona is Hungarian. It's solid cured pork fat, and his salo must have the skin on, and the skin must have been torched, not scalded. And he was insistent upon that on the day of slaughter when he saw that I was dunking the pigs and scalding and scraping them.
He hired us initially only so that he could have salo at the end results.
Yeah, that was the whole point of the pig.
Getting the whole pig for salo, and so we were first of all, we were the only ones who would even leave the skin on. Yeah. Because we're a custom operation. But scalding and scraping even wasn't enough for him. Yeah. He needed it torched. So I think the farmer, you didn't even have a torch on you. It was like the farmer wrestled one out of a garage or something.
Yeah, he was a hazelnut farmer.
What kind of torch do you use?
So I have been purchasing the cheapest one I could find at a hardware store until, two of those proved dysfunctional, because that's what happens when you buy the cheapest thing on the shelf. just doesn't work very long. And so I did finally break down, and I bought like a more utility grade one that roofers would use, you know, to melt tar and stuff. So it's better. Got it on Amazon.
Okay.
And it does have an onboard igniter, which is really nice. A little click, 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 click. And then you just pull the trigger. It actually has a trigger rather than a spinny valve, and it does help. And it needs to be like 500,000 BTUs, or you're again, it's just taking way too long. It needs to be a serious blast.
Okay.
And I would say the advantage of the torch, again, is a little bit of skunk, and that's possible sweetness that you can get. It's part of your recipe. It's also that you dispense with the chore of filling and heating the water. Mm-hmm. And depending on your hose availability in a backyard setup, you know, that could be a serious consideration. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of nice just to be able to walk up, shoot the pig, stick it, drag it out, torch.
Right.
Start right up. Now, usually in my setup, I have coordinated everything so that I'm not waiting for water to heat. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to deal with that. But it is, you know, a 55-gallon drum and extra apparatus that I have to lug around. Yeah. All over the place. But
are there any breeds that are more or less stubborn in releasing their hair?
All pigs are pigs.
Okay.
Even woolly pigs, even Mangalitsa's that have that downy underlayer and the long curly hairs, scald just like any other pig. In fact, I would say they're easier because you have that long curly hair. You don't even need to use a scraper. You just grab the curls. It's a lot, and you just pull it off by handfuls.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say if there is a significant advantage to any kind of pig over another in terms of ease of scrapage and scalditude, it would be lard pigs over lean pigs. And why would that be? I don't know. But lard pigs tend to be a little easier on the scald and scrape. And maybe they have more subcutaneous insulation in the form of fat that they just don't have thick scurfs and thick coats. They're already plenty warm, so they hold on to their coat lightly.
Okay,
comes off a little easier.
Neat.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is coming to me right now, but can you tell us about hairy bacon? Like, if you just wanted to completely neglect everything we're telling you.
Right. So it's done.
It's a thing.
Yeah, right. That's that part where any universal pronouncement I make is always undermined. That's it always has an exception.
In some part of the world.
Someone has been doing it for centuries.
Yeah.
So normal for me. But when I went to London to speak at the Savory Institute conference, restoring grasslands, I went into a butcher shop and there was an Irish and a British butcher in there. Tiny little place, like barely the size of our shop here, like 300 square feet. And they were so awesome. They gave me an apron. It was like a dream come true to go visit a small butcher shop with fresh meat in the great British tradition of British butchery. But the Irish guy was telling me about a treat that he remembers as a kid growing up in Ireland that he sorely missed and does not see anymore. And it was actually a treat. It was a special occasion thing that they would go and get a thing called hair bacon. And I was like, he can't mean what he's saying. Wait, what?
Like hair
bacon? No, hair bacon. Exactly what you think.
Like hair,
bacon with hair on it. And that's it.
Hair's not some symbol for something else.
No, right. Yeah. So, that's cool.
That's crazy.
Probably just washed, a clean pig, clean bedding, washed, and then forget the scalding, scraping, torching, and the skinning, and just cure it with that stuff on there. And you can even see, like I've seen in Italian butcher shops, hairy prosciutto legs from wild boar. Just leave it on there.
That's right.
You put enough salt on anything.
Yeah.
And it'll be all right. But
it has that sweetness you're talking about.
Yeah. Something.
Yeah.
He was really nostalgic about it.
Yeah.
And it was tasty and he really liked it. It was a special treat.
That's interesting too, because normally for us Westerners, you'd think, you have to go to, some like country that's not Western, let's say.
Oh, yeah.
To get something really off the wall crazy.
Yeah.
Like, places like Andrew Zimmern goes
Yeah.
or some of the Food Network.
Yeah.
Personalities.
Foods.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there you go, right in Ireland.
Yeah.
Like the country that basically saved Western civilization in a lot of ways. They had hare bacon. Like, I can't even imagine putting that in my mouth right now. Whereas some of the more exotic foods I have already put in my mouth and I can imagine trying it, but hare bacon, I can't imagine it.
Yeah.
So, but maybe someday we'll have the opportunity. If we have any of you Meatsmiths out there willing to try it.
Yeah. Cure some hare bacon.
Give some to us if you can, or invite us over and we'll try it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me again. It's been a good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say I'm more impressed with you now that I know about torching.
Yes.
Because I didn't know it took 2 passes.
Yeah.
That's really, and then a third like quasi pass with the scrub.
Yeah, in the middle of summer, it's sort of like hell.
Well, you've been doing it a lot this summer because our winch did break.
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't need a winch. You can just get a chain hoist. That's how we used it for years. But I think your arms are looking a little buffer these days. So.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's the point of this whole podcast.
Great. So stay tuned after the outro music, and we'll tag on the little conversation that Brandon had with Graham a week or so ago with the Farmers for America documentary. And try to find one of those screenings in your area if you can. He's going around the country right now. So I think that's all we have. And maybe we'll do the next episode will be evisceration of pigs, or we'll see what seems right at the time. But
yeah, and if you have suggestions as listeners, things you want to hear about, I love getting topics.
Yes,
I love getting it from you.
And
any gaps in your knowledge, and it can kind of be anything. It can be really abstract, or it can be really nuts and bolts technical. This episode was more technical, and so there might be a limited appeal about that. But if you want to know more on cooking in a way that is more tied to the agricultural produce of the land, or cooking for a family, culinary things, or philosophical things.
Yeah, that's what our Patreon is set up for,
in
fact. So please, 25 people. Are there 25 of you out there that could maybe sign up and then start funneling your questions to us? Because that's what we really want to start getting to on these podcasts.
Yeah,
so,
what's valuable to you.
Yeah, we're excited to get your feedback. Thanks so much, guys, and have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, Brandon, I guess I wanted to start this conversation by asking you a question and also posing that question to everyone here. And that question is, what is your first memory of a farm?
My first memory is of my grandfather, actually. I grew up in Southern California, so they called it a ranch. But it was, my dad grew up on it, and his 4 older brothers. And I must have been Abraham's age, for really young. But my memory is of my grandfather's gopher control strategy. And it was just it was a family farm, so they raised a couple beef every year. They weren't producing and selling lots of produce or anything like that. But I remember sitting on the sofa with my grandmother, looking out the sliding glass windows to the back lawn with my grandfather with ear protection on, and standing over a gopher hole with a shotgun, patiently. I don't know if that counts as a farm memory, but
that absolutely does. That's
one of my earliest.
I guess my first memory of a farm was similar to you, I grew up in a more urban setting, and so I would categorize myself as a newbie as well if I were to put myself in any of the categories in the film. And this mic is amazing. Like it's like 3 feet from me, and I feel like it's like super hot. I grew up in Miami my first 7 years, and when I was 6, my mother decided that we should spend the summer in Connecticut, and it was a farmhouse that we rented, and I just remember it being like a really gross place. There was cows, a bunch of cows, and I wasn't supposed to go near them, and there was a lot of poop, and it smelled very bad, and that was just kind of like my first memory was just stay away from the cows, and it's kind of gross. And so Brandon, I wanted to talk about this incredible transition that you've gone through. We touch upon it in the film, but talk to me about this this journey that you've gone on. What were the moments, like maybe let's pick 3 pivotal moments for you as you've transitioned from sort of living in Southern California to today being one of the foremost young meatsmiths that I have met, and perhaps in the country, in the world.
Okay, good. That's a small enough group. I'm comfortable with that. I think it was one of the pivotal ones was we noticed a certain hypocrisy, to not put it lightly, in academia, and so that got us disillusioned about that a little bit, and it made us want to go the opposite direction to integrity and honesty. And I think it could have been anything, anything that was physical, where the limitations were real and not just abstract. And so I think another pivotal moment was when we actually decided to act on that. And I chose to wait until our honeymoon. And
was it a surprise?
It was actually Lauren's idea.
Okay.
It's all Lauren's idea. But she, I was actually kind of downcast the week of our wedding, and she's like, "What is wrong with you? Not the time for this." And I said, "I think I'm down about my job," and I was just working at Whole Foods actually, as a way to pay my way through school, and our 2-week vacation for the honeymoon became my 2 weeks notice. I just didn't go back. And I think that was a pivotal time because we got home to Vashon and I just went around looking for work. And it seemed like a fragile time, but it was also really a confidence building experience to know that we could come to a new place, utterly unemployed, and really work hard, and that it would be okay. And so I got a job, several different jobs on the island, many of them all at once. And it wasn't until I got to working on a farm on Vashon, and then I worked there for exactly 2 years. And there were lots of galvanizing experiences there, most of them having to do with eating very well.
I remember you telling me a story about a piece of bread and olive oil.
Yeah, really simple. Didn't take much. But, if you grow up on like chips and salsa, right, and Taco Bell, a little bit of bread and olive oil is, right, it's an extraordinary experience, especially if you're exhausted with the sauce of labor. And I remember that at least where I was working, the goal for all of the food and the farming was not so that we could just eat healthy, because that's what we ought, or not just so that we can be good stewards of the land and create a small economy because that's what we ought to do, but it was also because we could kind of have our cake and eat it too. Like, come to find out, when you want to make something taste like itself, taste the best that it can, make the best meal you can. All those other things are prerequisites to that, you know. And that was kind of a revelation, I think, that gradually set in over those 2 years.
And I guess my next question that I'll also pose to all of you is, what are your 3 sort of fondest memories of food? And just, I'll pose that to you as well.
When I first started feeding my sons blood sausage, and they really liked it, that was gratifying. Because kids don't lie.
No, they don't.
About to try to please you. So that was great. Anytime my children like something I make, that's a good meal.
And I must say, in the film, we show such a short portion of things. When I was there with Brandon, the moment after they shoot the pig, he came in with a knife and cuts the jugular, and then someone else comes in with a bowl and is stirring the blood, and they don't waste anything from the pig. It's quite a spiritual experience. And as I was sitting back watching the movie, I was thinking to myself how lucky that I was that the first pig that I saw slaughtered was a pig with you, and in that scenario, because that's so rare these days. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just thank you for including me in that.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know that was your first.
Yeah, that was. I was trying to play it cool, like I'd been there 1,000 times. You know?
You did.
So, any other top food, blood sausage being appreciated by your kids being one of them?
You know, I have a good friend, I don't think he's here, but he has a very strange allergy to mammalian flesh, which is a thing that happens. And it's a major bummer. It means
Is it from that tick bite?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we roasted a lamb once at the parish on Vashon, which we do every year, by the way. Sunday after Easter, you're all invited. We roast lamb or goats over open flame. And they had visited Vashon to see if it's a place they wanted to live. And they came to that event. And, you know, he loves mammal meat. It doesn't take away the desire. Steak and anything coming from a mammal. And he actually had some that day with his EpiPen at the ready. And he didn't have a reaction.
Did
it was
not?
Kind of like this magical day for him. And so that was an affirmation of their choice to move to our island. So that was a good one.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I guess, on my end, my favorite. This is actually the first time I've posed this question in an audience, and I'm also caught off guard by myself. My favorite food memories. One of the wonderful things, and this particular event, we weren't able to put together a food event beforehand, but a lot of these screenings we have, and so we get to just have such incredible local food, and that's been incredible. So I think there was a screening that we did of the first film I directed, which is called American Meat, and we did that at a place called the Dream Farm in Minnesota. And I guess every Saturday during the summertime, a very small window, they make pizza fresh on the farm in like a pizza oven. And I think it was when I was first, kind of falling in love with my wife Susan, and we were on this road trip doing these screenings, and the pizza, we didn't know, it was way out in rural Minnesota, and we didn't know if anyone was going to show up, and it almost was like Field of Dreams or something. As soon as 1 o'clock rolled around, it was just car after car, and the pizza was so fresh, and they threw it in the oven, and it was cooked in 3 minutes with those super hot wood oven stoves. And I guess just that food was certainly a memory that I have, that just walking around the farm and eating the pizza and just sort of enjoying that with all the people there. That was certainly one of the great food moments. And I guess to switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the challenges. Just last night we were talking about. I was asking you about sort of the viability of some of the young farmers that you've gotten to know over the years, and I guess What do you think are the reasons why so many of the first generation farmers aren't able to sort of make it last? And maybe just talk a little bit about why you feel that, you know, that your farm and your family has been able to sustain, you know, through a number of years now.
Yeah, I think I try to think about that a lot, and my answer keeps changing. But I think that for us, and I'm sure it's just a function of where we are at in our life as a family and as a business. Our business isn't necessarily, you know, we don't sell produce from the farm. We kind of have a large backyard, is more how I consider it, and we raise animals as class curriculum for the classes that we offer, and we'll occasionally sell shares. And really, we provide an agricultural service of slaughter and butchery around the region, and have for, I think, about 8 years now. And the challenge, I think, has been to do the thing, not for the sake of the thing. And the thing about farming, I've found, is that the thing is not about farming for us. It kind of needs to have an end outside of itself. And the way that has kind of manifested in my experience, just as a family, is I get possessed by manias, by passions, and by convictions. Oh, and you put it well. You said you discover a connection, you know, with the land, or in my case, you know, you make bacon for the first time, or you raise and harvest your own rabbits in your backyard, and you get this connection that is meaningful. And it could be meaningful for many reasons. You know, they're all subjective and unique to you, and that can provide some inspiration for a while. And but then I find that you really don't know what you love until you do it, even when you don't love it so much. And that has definitely been a trial by fire that we have experienced. And you know, it gets hard. You set the standard so high in your amateurish zeal. You think, I really love traveling around the region, killing pigs for people the way they ought to be dispatched, and butchering them and curing them using traditional, non-wasteful means. I love this so much. I could do it forever, only, all the time.
Right.
But then, you know, there are other demands on your time, and your family might grow. And the real test of what your passion might be, or where your convictions might be leading you, is if you stick with them, is the trial. And that was definitely an eye-opening experience for me, is when I kept at it, even when I did not like it. And it made me realize, hey, I must really like this.
Right.
Because I'm still doing it, you know. And I think we put a lot of pressure on young people, particularly when you discover the connection as a young person and you catch the passion and you pursue something. And we're always kind of looking at the new generation like, what are you going to do? What is your passion? Find your passion and do it. You know, you want to pick the thing to do for your living that you love. Right. And I think especially when you're a young person, you might not have any idea what that is, and that will probably change. And I think that a beneficial, I guess, a grace that we experience as a result of particularly having a family is to keep doing that thing, even if the passion seems to fizzle. And if you keep doing it, you realize that it actually didn't fizzle, it just morphed. It's changing and it's moving, and it's reordering itself. It has a different end. And for us, you know, we're constantly trying to shape our agrarian service, our business, so that it is the servant of our family rather than the other way around, which
Right.
is real easy to do when you're passionate about something and very conscientious and very motivated.
Absolutely.
You can immediately make yourself a slave to that thing. And oddly enough, I think that makes it temporary.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking, I've recently been, I was telling, again, last night I was telling you that I've been deeply influenced by a book that, by Dr. Stephen Covey, which is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I read it, and one of the things he talks about in that book is how we all have these different centers in our life where you're either self-centered or you're family-centered or you're work-centered or you're spouse-centered. And that whenever you're focused on a center like that, it's deeply flawed, because if you are work-centered and you devote all of your life to your work, then suddenly if you're in the oil industry and that sort of no longer becomes viable, then your whole world falls apart. And so as you were talking, I was thinking a lot about how many of the new farmers become so farm-centered. It's all about the farm. It's all about the farm. And as that sort of mania takes root, it's almost like a spider that's like putting threads, but the web isn't being connected to a purpose. And so to me, I think that what you're talking about is your family lives deeply from principles. And so you have principles that you're working towards that are not quite related. I mean, that they're not, the farm is not the center of that. God's at the center of that, and whatever you choose as a family to specifically put there. And when you don't have that sort of end in and of itself as the goal, then actually the goal, it's sort of a Zen thing. Then the goal is accomplished when you're not sort of focused on the goal. And so I guess that's a little bit of how I was feeling as you were talking about that. And I guess one of the things that I like to do, because actually this summer we've been going all around the country, and the whole point of it, part of the point of it was that we're looking to, all of the screenings we're doing are with the farmers in the film. So we just came from Salem, Oregon, where we did a screening with Mickey Willenbring, who is the Native American and Puerto Rican woman who is in the film as she's calling to her sheep, and a military veteran. And so we're going around and doing the screenings with the farmers in the film to celebrate them and their work. And so one of the questions I always like to ask, because I was here filming quite a number of years ago, is just to tell me about how has the farm changed and how has it sort of progressed during the years since I've been here.
Yeah, well, we've honed it. It still has kind of a lot of arms. Farmstead Meatsmith does, and I hope that we have more clearly defined our ends so as to more better arrange our means. And that's really what's happened to the farm, I think, and to Farmstead Meatsmith, is trying to focus on those things that more efficiently accomplish, their telos, their basis, their reason for existing, rather than just for their own sake. So, for example, I had to buy a chainsaw. That was rough.
Why, are they faster? Or?
A little bit. A little bit. And so that has happened in a lot of ways. We're focusing more on the educational thing, because I find that as a processor or a harvester of livestock, that is very much a volume game. So if I'm going to win that one, I need to train 2 or 3 more guys and outfit 2 or 3 more trucks, and instead of doing 5 pigs a week, I need to do 25. And I don't really want to do that. I don't want to increase the quantity, because there's an inherent degradation of quality to a degree in my field. But I don't want to stop doing it. I want to keep the scale there. And so I kind of need to subsidize it in a way, which I know is probably really bad business move. But so we're creating more online educational opportunities, and we have using a lot of the custom processing or the livestock harvesting that I do as the medium, as the curriculum for that. Because it's so incredibly diverse, and it's great material to teach. And so we have an online membership now that we launched last year, and really for the past which is educational, that we update constantly. And really for the past 8 years, I feel like it's anyone who owns a small business or is in the private sector in any way knows exactly what this feels like, I think. But we reinvent the business just about every year. And we redo everything, almost. And that is when a lot of creativity comes, and it's usually out of necessity. We'll find, gee, no one's called to have their pigs harvested for quite a while. We need to generate income this month. And so, I mean, we've had situations where we'll sit down and say, we must have $500 in 2 weeks. Very much must. And so we'll set that as a goal, and then we'll create something and put it out there. And so far, we've always reached that goal. And you know, the ability to do the scramble like that is it's possible, and it gets less and less possible, particularly the more mouths you have to feed. And so we're really trying to set up a little more security, which is a lot of what, you know, a lot of these young farmers in this film are going to be thinking about and already are. You know, you get really concerned with the starting and finding the land and finding the capital. And then once you've started, you want to start thinking about security. So that's kind of where we're at right now, trying to establish that through the business.
Yeah, and this morning, and sort of like and I guess this will be the last question because we're almost out of time. You were talking to this online to 20 or 30 people that are in your community, and they were sort of asking you questions. And I guess talk to me about final question about your love of education and your love of teaching and how that's manifested itself through in-person and online communications.
Yeah, and I mean, I can keep that short too in case anyone wants to toss a question in before we go, but for me, I cannot help it. I actually don't understand a thing unless I teach someone else what it is. And so I have to verbalize all the things that I learn. So really, anyone that signs up for a class or becomes a Meatsmith member is just doing me a big favor. Like great, now I can articulate it and understand what it is. So anything I learn, I teach. In college, I started teaching right away, and it was good for my grades. And that just seems to be a pattern with me.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming up.